Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today I am in a little bit of a different setup. I'm trying to move the camera around the library a little bit to see if I can get the best sound and make the best use of the natural light. So this is kind of coming toward me now instead of just half of me. So I might bop around the room for the next few videos, just trying to figure out where things feel the most comfortable and look the best, but we'll be in the same room regardless. Today's video is going to be a run through of all of my top 10s from 2020 to 2025. So at the end of this year, because it was halfway through the decade, I did a little wrap up at the end of my book journal. So I keep a book journal. I have kept a book journal, a formal book journal since 2020. I have been documenting my reads since 2012, which is something that I spoke about a little bit previously on the channel before I took my little hiatus. But at the end of this past year, I felt like I had been doing these formal book journals for 5 years, 6 years, I guess technically now, and I wanted to do a little wrap up of that. And part of that little wrap up was documenting my top 10 books by year. So I took all of the top 10s, which luckily I had already written down in all of the previous years in the yearly wrap ups, and just put them on one page. And what I thought would be really fun is because I think enough time has passed now that we can get a little bit of a sense of how reading tastes kind of go up and down over the years. But also it would be a fun experiment to look back and think, the books that I chose as my top 10, do I still love them? Did they stick with me over the years? Do I still think about them all the time? How much do I love them? How much has that changed? So I thought I could make this into a 2-part video, hopefully. So this first part will just be going through the top 10s, and I'm going to go quickly. I'm not going to talk about every book at length or anything, or else this video will be hours long. I'm just going to quickly run through, comment very briefly on the books, and they won't be all here in a list. So it'll be a little bit of a review for people who are longtime watchers of the channel, and it will be a good selection of my literary tastes for people who are new to the channel. So it kind of serves that dual function. And then I am hoping to make a second video where I'm going to tier rank these books based on how much I still love them. So are they still like a top favorite of all time? Do I feel like they're still good books, but maybe not a favorite of all time? Have my feelings cooled? And I'll figure out what the rankings are gonna be, but I thought this could be a fun little experimental video. So we will start back at 2020 and we'll go all the way up to the end of 2025. And like I said, we'll go from 10 to 1, I guess, in each one, and we'll just talk very briefly about the selections overall. So in 2020, this was, I believe, before I formally started the channel. This is when I started watching BookTube. So in 2020 is when I started to get recommendations from BookTubers. So way back in 2020 is when I first started watching videos and got to start to know some people, took place in a couple of reading challenges, became friends with some of the BookTubers with whom I'm still very good friends today. And so I think that those BookTube recommendations started to leak into the TBRs a little bit. So in 2020, my number 10 book of the year was The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang. Then coming in at number 9, we had Cemetery Boys, which is a YA paranormal fantasy. Then at number 8, we have Grey Sister by Mark Lawrence. Number 7 was The Truth About Animals, which is the first nonfiction selection on the list. So this is just fun facts about animals written by a zoologist named Lucy Cook. Then coming in at number 6, we had a romance novel. So that is Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall, who has become one of my favorite contemporary romance authors. Coming in at number 5 was My Dark Vanessa. I remember this was a recommendation, I think, from Murphy Napier. I think that's where I got that BookTube recommendation. So that one is literary fiction, dark literary fiction. Then coming in at number 4 is Before They're Hanged by Joe Abercrombie. Then we have The Girl Who Drank the Moon, which is a middle grade fantasy. Number 2 is Green Woad, which is a book that I almost never talk about, but that is a Robin Hood retelling. So it is on my retelling shelf, and I read that in 2020. And then the number 1 book for 2020 was Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. And it's really sad that I read that in 2020 and I still have not read Ship of Destiny. So I'm sorry, in particular to Jake, but to everybody for that one. Okay, then we get to 2021. So this was the year that I started my BookTube channel, where I was recording a lot of videos, still getting a lot of recommendations from BookTube, trying to figure out my modern taste in fantasy and integrate all the different things that I like to read. So coming in at number 10 for 2021 was Dune. I can't believe it's been that long since I read Dune. I have not continued on and read any of the other books. This is also going to be a shame myself video, I think, because it's just going to be a reminder of all the things that I started and did not continue. So Dune was number 10. Then we had Turncoat at number 9. Turncoat was probably the space for me where I really started to fall in love with Dresden. I think a couple books before that, I started to think that the books were great, but Turncoat, I just remember feeling very emotional about Turncoat in particular. So really, really good memories associated with that one. Number 8 was The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie, so one of the standalone First Law books. Number 7 was East of Eden by John Steinbeck, so that is literary classic fiction. Number 6 was Wrath by, right here, John Gwynne. Why? My brain's not working. Wrath by John Gwynne, and then right above it, I remember this being very difficult when I was putting together my top 10 video to decide which was going to be 5 and which was going to be 6, but number 5 was Tyrant's Throne by Sebastian de Castell. Number 4 was It by Stephen King. So 2021 was the first time that I ever read It. It was a big one of Stephen King's that I had put off for a really long time and then finally got around to reading it in 2021. Number 3, I clearly cheated and put the Warlord Chronicles, but it's okay because it's my list. I think if I had to pick a book from the Warlord Chronicles, it would have been Enemy of God, but we can put the full trilogy there. Then number 2 in 2021 was Ship of Magic, which again, this is also an apology video to Jake, I think, just Ship of Magic, 2021, 5 years ago. You know, I do feel ashamed. I do. And then my number 1 book of the year, my favorite read of 2021 is Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier, which is a historical fantasy novel, beautiful writing, very lush, very atmospheric, gorgeous book. So that was 2021. 2022 is what I think of as the year of Dresden. So even though I clearly began to read Dresden in 2021, I became obsessed with Dresden in 2022. And that was the year of the Dresden Files reading vlogs as well, which were some of the most fun videos that I made for BookTube. So really, really had a great time with that. I'm sure there's going to be some Dresden on the 2022 list. Coming in at number 10. So my number 10 pick for 2022 was Piranesi by Susanna Clark. I think it's Susanna. It'll be up on the screen anyway. But Piranesi, all of BookTube was in love with Piranesi in 2022, and I was not immune to that love. So it was a great read. Number 9 was Tigana, my very first Guy Gavriel Kay. Not the only Guy Gavriel Kay to end up on top 10 lists, but the first one that I had read. Number 8 was The Price of Spring, which was the ending of the, now I don't remember the name of the quartet of books. It's okay. Clearly I should have looked at these lists before I started to read, but I'll put that name up there as well. But Price of Spring, beautiful, a gorgeous fantasy series that takes place over an extended period of time. We follow characters over their lifespan, and it is just very beautiful, very unique fantasy novel. Number 7 was Battleground. So I said we were going to get some Dresden Files books in here. Number 6, we have A Little Hatred by Joe Abercrombie. And number 5, we have Red Country by Joe Abercrombie. Lots of First Law on these lists as well. Very deserved. Number 4, Shield of Thunder by David Gemmell. So this is one of his Greek books. I'm trying to remember if it has a different, if the trilogy itself has a different name, but I don't think so. I don't remember, but Shield of Thunder was great. That entire trilogy was great. Number 3 is a book called Bitch, which is a nonfiction by the same author who wrote The Truth About Animals, Lucy Cook, a zoologist. She's got an excellent writing style. Her books are fascinating. I love animal facts. If you love National Geographic, if you're the kind of nerd who likes to watch animal documentaries, you really should read these books because they are phenomenal. Number 2 was Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation by MXTX. And then my number 1 book of 2022 was Changes by Jim Butcher. So like I said, 2022 was the year of Dresden for me, and nothing was going to top the reading experience of Changes. It was one of those books that was so incredibly hyped and managed to surpass that hype. It is the kind of book where you go in thinking this cannot possibly be as good as people say, and then it ends up being even better. So it made me a true Dresden fan for life, obsessed with the series since the day I read that book, since the day I finished that book. All right, then we have 2023. So my number 10 pick for 2023 was The Binding. And I apologize, but I do not remember the author's name, the author who wrote The Binding. And it's all the way down on my standalone shelf, so I can't really cheat and look either. But it is a romance with some low fantasy elements, I would say. So not romantasy in the way that we think about it now, the genre that has become so popular, but it is a romance and it does have fantastical elements. Number 9 was nonfiction. That was The Anthropocene Reviewed, which was John Green's first published work of nonfiction. Don't quote me on that, but it is John Green and it is one of his works of nonfiction. And it's a collection of essays that he has written about the human experience and living as a human in this time. And some of them are funny, some of them are serious, some of them are quirky, and they're all very, very interesting. So that was a great book to read. Number 8 was Guards. So one of the City Watch books. I can't believe that none of the Death books made it onto any of the other lists because I love those books so much. But I guess I just read a lot of great stuff when I was recording all the time on BookTube. I had so many wonderful books to read, so it was hard to pull out a top 10. But Guards definitely deserves its place. Phenomenal book. Love those. Haven't continued those either, so we'll continue the shame spiral, but I really did love it. Number 7 is The Wisdom of Crowds, so another First Law book. And then number 6 was Project Hail Mary. And Project Hail Mary is a phenomenal book, but I think that the audiobook experience elevates it even higher. It is one of the best audiobooks that I have ever listened to. It was amazing. I remember the car trip where I was reading it because it is cemented into my mind forever. Number 5 was The Privilege of the Sword, and this is a coming-of-age fantasy novel starring a young woman, which doesn't happen as often as reading coming-of-age novels, fantasy novels starring young men, so it was particularly good because it's a different perspective, but just, phenomenal book overall. It's written by Ellen Kushner, who wrote one of my favorite fantasy standalones of all time, Swords Point, and this one is a little more classic in terms of execution, but she still does some really fun things with tropes, and her writing is gorgeous, so definitely recommend that one. Number 4 is Nona the Ninth, which is one of the Locked Tomb novels, book 3 in the Locked Tomb. I love all the Locked Tomb novels, but Nona is so sweet. A special place in my heart. Number 3 is Voyage of the Basilisk, and I remember agonizing over which of these books to put on my top 10 list because I loved all of the books in the Natural History of Dragons series, and I think this one was just my favorite, which is funny because it's the one that takes place at sea, and I am scared of the ocean and all of the creatures in it. But you know what? Not when they're dragons, I guess. I don't know. I had a great time with this one. Number 2 was Gideon the Ninth. Gideon, I love this book. I think Gideon the Ninth and the Locked Tomb in general is going to be a book series that you either love or hate. I don't feel like there's a lot of middle ground when you read Gideon the Ninth. I don't think there's a lot of, it was okay. It's just so different from anything else that I have read, and the writing, the humor, the characters are so particular that it's either going to resonate with you or not, I think. And no shame to anybody who picks up the Locked Tomb and does not enjoy it, but if you do love it, it's something so special. So I love it. Love the Locked Tomb. Gideon the Ninth was great. And the only reason that it is number 2 on the list is because the number 1 selection for 2023 was Heaven Official's Blessing, which is a long, sprawling Chinese romantasy written also by MXTX. She had written Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, one of my favorite books from previous years. But this one is, I believe, her best work. It is very long, and there are a lot of side plots that all converge at the end, so it takes a lot of patience to get through. I remember when I did this top 10 or this favorite books video in particular, I said, I'm going to recommend a number 1 book that I can guarantee that the vast majority of people watching are not going to like. but that's fine because I loved it and I still love it. Spoiler for the next video, but I still love it. And that was 2023. Now are the next two years are top 10s that I never got to put on the channel. So 2024, 10th place for 2024 was The Dispossessed. This was a fantastic book. Definitely, it's a slight book in terms of size, but chunky in terms of content and reading experience. It was a very enjoyable reading experience, but took me a long time to get through. And there was a lot to think about. It would have been a great book to be able to discuss a little bit more. So I'm kind of sad that I read it at a time when I wasn't on BookTube as much. But I had a really good experience with that one. Number 9 was Carrie Soto is Back, which is by, oh gosh, the girl who did Daisy Jones and the Six and Evelyn Hugo. Why can I not remember her name? Taylor Jenkins Reid. So Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is just a contemporary romance novel, but it's about a tennis player who is trying to regain her title. And I love books about sports. I like romance. It was a good combination. Number 8 was Pachinko, and I probably can see that book from here to see who the author is. No. Yes. But I can't read it because my eyes are not good enough. I do not remember the author's name, but Pachinko, historical fiction, takes place in Korea, and heartbreaking story. It was beautiful. It was sad. It made me feel like I was being scooped out when I was reading it, but it was a great experience. I think they made a TV show, which I have not seen, but I probably should watch because I think it would make a good television show as well. Number 7 in 2024 was Empire of the Damned by Jay Kristoff. Still haven't finished that trilogy. Spoiler for my February wrap up, but I did not get to finish that series either yet. Number 6 was The Snakehead, which is a work of nonfiction that I talked about in one of my earlier videos about Chinese immigration into America. Number 5 was Happy Place by Emily Henry. This is my favorite of Emily Henry's books. She's very popular author of modern romance novels. Definitely writes romance in a bit of a different way than many other modern authors. And I do like all of the books by her that I have written, but this one is definitely my favorite by far. Just, when you're reading romance, I think a lot of it has to do with tropes. And this is an angsty kind of breakup, makeup romance, which I like. I like it when there's drama in the romance books. So I prefer a more angsty, dramatic romance than a sweet and soft romance. So Happy Place is number 5. Number 4 was Empire in Black and Gold by Adrian Tchaikovsky, which is a really cool book about bug people or people with bug attributes anyway. And I really loved it, and I have not read a single other one. I was supposed to buddy read this with Kyle, which I have doomed several buddy reads that I organized with Kyle. So again, totally at fault here. My number 3 pick for 2024 was actually an arc in a manga series. So this was the year that I finished Demon Slayer and read the Infinity Castle arc. So I put the Infinity Castle arc as my number 3 pick in 2024. Which again, my list, so I can organize it how I wish. It is not a single book, but it was a single reading experience, and I conceptualize it in my mind as a single one. Second choice for 2024 was The Will of the Many, the second book has come out, and I do have the second book, but I have not read the second book yet, so I'm looking forward to that. I really enjoyed that one. And my number 1 pick for 2024, a book that I excessively praised in a previous video, is The Sarantine Mosaic by Guy Gavriel Kay. I stand by what I said in that video, which is that I think that this is one of the best fantasy duologies ever written. I think it has excellent prose, excellent characterization. It is a very human story, and I will think about it for many, many years, I am sure. Then we get to 2025. So last year, my top 10 books. Haven't talked about a couple of these. So number 10 was Sunrise on the Reaping, which was the new Hunger Games book. I really enjoyed this. I did not go back and reread all the Hunger Games books, but after I read Sunrise on the Reaping, I went back and rewatched the Hunger Games movies, and they were also very enjoyable. So I'm looking forward to them making the movie of Sunrise on the Reaping. It was fun to go back and read Haymitch's story. I say fun, but it was really sad, obviously. Heartbreaking to go back and read, but it was nice to be back in that world, especially since I really didn't like the President Snow book, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. That one was not for me. So I was happy to have enjoyed Sunrise on the Reaping. Number 9, work of nonfiction, that is Rogues by Patrick Radden Keefe. So this was a collection of essays, or a collection of stories, I guess, about various rogues from history. Some modern, some in the past, and he just has a great style. I love everything that he has ever written. I'm sure whenever he publishes a book, it'll end up on one of my favorites of the year for sure. Number 8, we have The Martian, which is the second Andy Weir book. Gosh, I hope that's his name now, because I just said that automatically, but I'm second guessing myself. Regardless, we had Project Hail Mary before, and now we have The Martian, which is also a really enjoyable audiobook experience. Number 7 in 2025 was Blood Over Bright Haven, which I really enjoyed, but I did not like as much as Sword of Kaigen. So I think I just had really high expectations because I love Sword of Kaigen, and it wasn't quite at the same level for me, even though technically it may be a better written book. You know, Emma Wong had more experience, but the emotional beats of Sword of Kaigen, I think, were more intense for me, and I enjoyed it for that reason. Then we had number 6 was The Message, which I think is by Ta-Nehisi Coates, which is, again, another work of nonfiction talking about various political... I'm trying to think if it's... I know it's related to the Palestine War. So he traveled to Palestine and got to experience firsthand the experiences of the people living there, but it took place in 3 parts. So for part of it, he had gone to Africa, and for part of it, he had gone to Palestine, but I'm trying to remember what the third part was. And it was essentially a story about humanity, about dehumanization, about what it means to live in a world that sees other people as lesser, and how to move forward and how to interpret what is happening in the world around you. And it was a lovely story. His writing is very powerful, and it gave me a lot to think about. It made me very emotional again to read, and just stuck with me for that reason. So that was also a very enjoyable read for me. Number 5, and there may be some judgment. I don't know what the prevailing booktube opinions are on this book anymore, because I read it years and years after everybody else. But number 5 was Fourth Wing, which I enjoyed a lot more than I thought I was going to. I ended up reading the second book right afterwards, and I did not enjoy it nearly as much. But the first book I thought was really good. Some of the romantic interactions were not to my personal taste, but I love dragons. I love a school story. I love it when people are kind of thrown into danger and have to fight their way through. It was very tropey. A lot of the twists and turns were very expected, but it was enjoyable. I blazed through it. I read it so quickly. It was addictive. I can see why so many people liked it when it first came out, and I too very much enjoyed it. Book 2, I was a little more lukewarm on, so I will read book 3, but book 4 is not out, so there's no particular rush for that right now. Number 4 was a book I talked about in my previous video, and that was Princess Floralinda and the 40 Flight Tower. So that is a novella by Tamsin Muir, the author of the Locked Tomb series, which is really fun, quirky, a little bit darker than maybe expected, and just overall a really fun read. Number 3 was My Brilliant Friend, which I also talked about in that previous video. So this is a work of historical fiction / literary fiction about 2 friends growing up in Naples in the 1950s. Excellent character work, just a beautiful portrayal of female friendship and all of the various shades of emotion that come along with that. Very much looking forward to continuing on with that series as well. Number 2 for 2025 was Berserk. This is a manga series, dark fantasy, but really a mishmash of a lot of tropes. I think if you like heroic fantasy, classic fantasy, and you don't mind a darker story, you should definitely check out Berserk. I have been reading these in the deluxe volumes, which are a luxury. I will tell you, if I could read every manga series that I loved in that same format, it would be perfect. It's just so nice to see the artwork on such a grand scale. And the artwork in Berserk is truly phenomenal. It is gorgeous and just elevates the story in every way. So I am getting near the end of the published volumes of Berserk, and it's making me really sad because I am not ready to be waiting for more story to come out. And then my last one, my number one book of 2025 was the poetry collection Devotions by Mary Oliver, which I also talked about at length in a recent video. But this is a compendium of some of her most popular poetry from the entirety of her career. Mary Oliver writes a lot about life, about nature, about our connection to nature and what that means for us. And her poems are just very simple and very beautiful, and I very much enjoyed them. So that was my number one pick from last year. And that is it. Hopefully this didn't take too long. I have no great concept of time or how long I've been recording, but hopefully it was not too long. And like I said, I will make a part 2 of this video so I can go back and kind of look at these books. Even as I was going through some of them, I was like, I can't believe that is like at number 7 and this book is at number 3, or I can't believe. So my opinions have changed a little. I still understand why I selected all of these books, how they ended up on the list, where they ended up on the list. But I will say that were I to go back, if I was given all of these titles in a hat and I had to rearrange them in order by year, I don't know that the order would end up the same. So it'll be fun to kind of explore that and see where it goes. But there's a little overview of my reading for the last 6 years from 2020 to the end of 2025. If you have read and loved any of these books, please let me know. If there are other books that you think I should read based on the ones that I have enjoyed here, I would also love any of those recommendations. And I will see you with another video soon. Bye.